Hi everybody and welcome to The Garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux and this is the Court of Public Opinion, which, believe it or not, started out, I think, Pete, what was it? Was it 10 minutes? Then it became 20? Then it became 30? And, I don't know. Hello, Gary.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Afternoon.
Now, later this Tuesday, the RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, will reduce interest rates. The question is, by what? A quarter or 0.5%? I reckon a quarter. We will see. Maybe 2 more cuts before the end of the year. All made more complicated because the employment figures that came out during the week are very strong, which will constrain the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia. We'll see. We'll see. President Trump spoke with Putin overnight, Australian time. We're recording a show that is posted at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. We're recording it on Monday afternoon. My bet is that Putin, being a thug and a bully, will stall Trump, or try to, hoping to get some solid ground under his tanks for a spring offensive against Ukraine. The man is a murderous bum. I'm talking about Putin. You can't trust or deal or appease people like that. See if I'm right. Now, Angus Taylor loses his bid for the top job. Well, maybe this was not the one to win. Could we have somebody tell us, please, is it Susan Lee or Susan Lay? I keep hearing both. But speaking of Miss Lay, she talks of meeting modern Australia. Meeting modern Australia. She says we, meaning the Libs, I guess, have a lot of listening to do. Listening. I keep coming back to this. You're not there to listen. You're there to represent us. You start listening, who are you going to listen to? There are 28 million of us. That's an awful lot of listening. Look, you're there because you believe in something. And you have values that can win over the electorate. If you can't, you have the wrong values, or the wrong people, or the wrong job. Key to the future of not only the Liberal Party, but the entire country, is this net zero nonsense, for example. Now, we had Dr. Patterson, the former head of ANSTO, which is the Atomic Energy Authority in Australia. He was the head of that for, I think it was 10 or 15 years. A very special guest he was, live streaming show on Friday last, jeremycordeaux.com, 9 to 12. Do join us. If you didn't join us last Friday, please join us this coming Friday. He was scathing about the lack of leadership, intelligence and logic when it came to understanding nuclear power. Now that Denmark, this was just last week, mind you, now that Denmark has embraced nuclear energy, Australia, believe it or not, is the only developed country in the world which continues to outlaw nuclear power. The only country in the developed world, ladies and gentlemen. It's like being the only country in the world to have an NDIS. Wow! We should be acutely embarrassed and concerned. The whole climate change, net zero, anti-nuclear stance is about blind ignorance, superstition. Think the primitive natives of New Guinea, for example, with their cargo cult. Can't talk them out of that. They think it's totally sensible. It's not. It's totally stupid. But you'll never convince the believers. It's a dogma. You can't have intelligent freedom of thought in a dogma. How do you make people think? Well, simple answer is, of course, you can't. But you definitely don't allow them and follow them, unless of course you're a lemming, you know, over the cliff. There is no climate crisis. Net zero will simply damage the economy. Our emissions are insignificant anyway, 1.3%. So again, I say, what is the problem these idiots are trying to fix? And at what cost? 30% rebates if you get solar with batteries. This is a big government initiative. The government is using taxpayers' dollars to subsidise all this nonsense. They, or we, subsidise the industry, we subsidise the installers, and we subsidise the consumers. All ill-informed and misled. Alternatives are not cheaper. Lived experience will tell you that. Check your bills. The Chinese use our coal to produce solar panels and wind turbines. Yep, our coal. Where is the environmental saving? If you want to save on electricity bills and you want to save the planet, it would have been far simpler just to get rid of Labour and their renewables at the last election. It's cost us a fortune and will go on doing so. Look, I tell you what, I would vote Labour if one of these bastards could just answer one simple question. Just one question. The question is, why is it okay for the Chinese and the Indians to burn our coal, but not us? Why? Why, do they live in some other atmosphere? Talk about cargo cults. You're a bunch of liars and crooks, and you're swindling us out of our prosperity and future. To imagine these people were rewarded with an election win when they will introduce things like unrealised capital gains tax. Unrealised capital gains tax. And just to show you how deceitful and grubby these Labour people are, former premiers, prime ministers and politicians will be exempt. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? But make no mistake, once introduced into your super fund, my super fund, our super funds, it'll be easy to spread it out to all other investments. Unrealised capital gains tax, and probably it could be applied to our own homes. Startups will be a thing of the past. No one will want to do that. Capital, which you know is very portable these days, will leave the country and take with it our future. It is amazing that the worst performing government in the OECD for 2023 and 2024, the worst performing government in the OECD was re-elected with an increased majority. Is that amazing or is it lemming? I don't know. Stamp duty, property tax, income tax, capital gains tax,
excise.
All the excises, hundreds of different levies and fines, state and federal. If you've ever wondered, I looked it up. I wanted to depress myself, I suppose. You add it all up, you know what it comes to? $1 trillion. Just a bit under $1 trillion. $1 trillion for nothing. You know, we spent half the year actually working for the government. Then the latter half, they get theirs first, of course. The latter half, we get to keep. So we're doing it all for half the return we should have. Now, there has to be a tipping point. A point at which people will revolt. They will revolt. Rise up, take to the streets, and get rid of the blood-sucking socialist bastards. But the problem is that at that point, the opposition will figure that government will just drop into their lap. So we won't have achieved anything. Just a different bunch of blood-sucking bastards, I suppose. We need a new deal, ladies and gentlemen, a new deal. Fewer bureaucrats, less red tape, less green tape, much less tax, more incentives, more transparency, less duplication. You know, the states have got their education department and health department. Federal government's got the same thing, but no schools and no hospitals. Less duplication and more reward for effort. A government that will pledge to live within its means or quit. Everything at the moment is back to front. Counterproductive, in fact. I'm not saying that we should penalise failure, but we certainly shouldn't reward it. Take the metaphorical lead out of our saddlebags now. Run a meritocracy. With such a philosophy, we could take on the world and win. If you think I'm wrong, nuts, and you want the handouts to go on until there is simply nothing left to hand out, okay, fine, okay. But remember, socialists do run out of other people's money eventually, sooner or later. If Susan Lee or Susan Lay goes for woke and climate crap and goes on with the welcome to country and all that nonsense, I will throw my weight behind One Nation as the only conservative voice in the country. But here's a radical idea. You know, there are several conservative parties, mostly small, mostly born out of disappointment or frustration with the Liberal Party. Why in heaven's name wouldn't they unite to meet the socialist threat? Combine forces, because this country is in real danger of being lost to all this dangerous nonsense. The conservative movement is splintered. It would make a lot more sense to unite. Talk to me on Friday about that if you like. 0491 65 68 60. 65 68 60. Give me a call. Round the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com. Social media is becoming, well, I don't do a lot of social, well, I do this. Pete, this is social media, isn't it? It is, yes, right, okay. But I don't sort of sit there and stare at my phone looking at all those X things that come through every morning. Social media is becoming more and more influential, as you would probably know. Now, there are very strict disclosure rules covering radio and television. If you are a presenter and you take money or kind from a sponsor or an advertiser, you must declare it on the program and on the station's website. That's the law. That's transparency. No such law exists in social media, which, because of its growing importance, is an unacceptable oversight. Now, we know the law has trouble keeping up with technology. It always has. But this is a really important issue in the light of so many so-called influencers presenting so-called impartial political opinion and advice while taking money. In other words, their opinions are being bought, paid for by one political party or another. A law has got to be introduced as quickly as possible to stamp this out. These people obviously can have any political opinion they like, and that goes for me as well, if you haven't noticed. But if money is involved, changing hands, you have a right to know. We're here with the best wishes of the Rising Sun Inn. It's a lovely spot, 60 Bridge Street at Kensington. Their telephone number is 8333-0721. Grant and Jackie will look after you. They're our sponsors, along with Jim Elder. The Rising Sun Inn, I'll tell you about Jim in a moment. The Rising Sun, regularly chosen as the best pub or inn in South Australia, built back in 1845. It's a beautiful spot, warm, lots of lovely atmosphere. As we get into winter, the open fires, of which I think they have 3 or 4, are just wonderful, just beautiful. And Jim Elder's Fine Art Gallery in Melbourne Street, North Adelaide, he had his auction, big auction, first one for the year, last Sunday. I went for a couple of things, but didn't get them. It was very competitive. It always is. So if you're looking to sell a painting and you'd like Jim to appraise it and you'd like to get the best price for it, Jim Elder will help you. Jim or Helen, his lovely wife, on 088 267 2869. He's always looking for paintings, and within, 3 months there'll be another auction up there. The shooting down of MH17 over Ukraine has often been attributed to Russia. At great expense, we have now discovered, and we have proven, that this is true. Now let's see where it goes. You can't, or you shouldn't, be able to kill hundreds of people, including many Australians, just like that. Cold-blooded murder. Russia is now convicted in an international court, but what now? What is the penalty that Russia will pay? What are the consequences? I bet you nothing. They'll get away with it. And all those people will have died for nothing. I hope I'm wrong. The ad featuring the late Fred Hollows, he has a charity which is much featured on television, ads asking for money. His son now runs it. The ad explains that in Rwanda, I think I've got the words right, in Rwanda we cure blindness with just $25. $25 a month. A $25 cataract operation. $25, which is what the charity is asking us to give every month. Now, here's the question. I don't know if it's occurred to you. Why does it cost $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 here in Australia to have a cataract operation? I know that because I had one. Up to $10,000 in Australia. $25 in Rwanda. There's something terribly wrong here. Maybe you can tell me what you think it might be. I think it's called Medicare. What is it, 90%? I think it's about 90% of childcare centres are for profit. This sort of happened more or less overnight, amazingly. They are not for profit. They are for profit. Mostly owned by private equity, huge chains of childcare centres. Why? The government. The government. Just look at when the explosion in childcare centres occurred. It coincided exactly with the government's policy of free childcare. Government subsidised childcare. Ah, God, they were in like Flynn. Like free visits to the doctor. Like your old-fashioned GP, the government, through Medicare, has turned doctors' surgeries and childcare centres into profit centres. Billions of taxpayer dollars will attract these pirates, believe me. Government means well, but they don't know what they're doing. As I've said to you many times on this podcast, the Court of Public Opinion, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Think the NDIS. Oh, here's something else that I thought I'd mention to you, which is kind of interesting. The Home Medicine Review. You guys heard of that?
No, I haven't.
The Home Medicine Review, or checkup, or inspection. I'd never heard of it. Home medicine inspections. Well, I'll tell you the story. I get a call, presumably with my doctor's approval. I can't imagine how else they'd have got my name and number. There's an organisation paid for by the taxpayer who do this. They're pharmacists. Well, I didn't see their credentials, but I'm assuming they're pharmacists. They ring you, presumably, with your GP's approval, and they say, we would like to check your medication. Really? This check is free, by the way, it's bulk billed. Of course it is. What medication are you on? So I told them. They say, well, we will come and tell you how you should be taking that medication. God, am I putting it in the wrong hole? I mean, it's bloody ridiculous. How do you take medication? We will come and check that you're taking the medication properly and that it is appropriate. This is after you've been to the general practitioner, your GP, and you've got a prescription, and the prescription you then take to the chemist fills the prescription. So these are all checks and balances. But you haven't prescribed this thing for yourself. Now we have this new level of bureaucracy.
It's written on the bloody bottle.
Well, I think this is anyway, you make up your own mind. This is a third level, another organisation to check on all of the above. You know, and I said to the guy, how many people do you have roaming around the community doing this? Oh, hundreds. How many people do you see a day? Oh, well, 10 or 12 every day. It must be incredibly expensive. This other level of medical observation or supervision comes around to your home, believe it or not, just to check that the medication that you've been prescribed is the medication that you are taking and that you are taking appropriately. Now, I can't believe it. It's very considerate. It's lovely. It's the nanny state. It's all of that. But I'm told that this has been going on for quite some time. Even though I'd never heard of it, it's been going on for years. Home medication inspections. They asked me to sign a form approving government access to my details, you know, what I was taking, medication, which, by the way, is minimal, absolutely minimal. I hate taking anything. Yet, red wine is an exception.
Perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. But somebody comes around to the house, sits down with you, no charge, he said, no charge, it's all paid for by the government. Wrong! It's paid for by the taxpayer. Do the words over-servicing, perhaps, come to mind?
It's a scam.
Well, I trust my doctor. I trust my pharmacist. And I trust my own common sense that I'm not going to take the wrong thing in the wrong manner and the wrong way at the wrong time. Perhaps they think I'm senile. I don't know. Now, population growth. How much time have I got, Pete?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, a little bit. Population growth is an issue that needs to be addressed, discussed. Story in The Age last week predicted that the population of Melbourne will be 9 million people by 2050. The national population, 50 million. That's only 25 years away. If that, well, 25 years. I can clearly remember the year 2000. Yeah, that's 25 years ago, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Blink. Now, if that happens, Melbourne can forget about ever being named again one of the world's most livable cities. I know Pete's hot on population because he sort of blames it pretty much on a lot of things. Adelaide is much more livable than Melbourne at the moment because it's a smaller population. It all begs the question, what should Australia's population be in the years ahead? Do you know no political party has a population policy, has no idea of exactly how many people we should have in this wonderful country? That's plain crazy. And we're bringing in migrants at up to 1 million a year? It doesn't make any sense. You know, we have to feed people and we have to provide water and we have to do a whole lot of different things. And are they coming in to contribute or to jump on some sort of imagined, well, in some cases it's not an imagined gravy train, it is. Anyway, 0491 65 68 60 next Friday around the dining room table. We've got some dates which I would love to give you. Happy birthday, by the way, if you're having a birthday or a wedding anniversary. Special day. I hope it's going to be an especially nice day. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh, look, that's interesting. Do you know, before this day, in 1310, going back a while, ladies and gentlemen, I do know that. Before this day, in 1310, shoes, left and right, were exactly the same. Yeah. No. On this day, how somebody had the foresight to record it, I don't know, but there you go. On this day in 1310, shoes were made for left and right hand feet. It's got to be a useful trivial pursuit question somewhere along the line. Levi Strauss and Jacob Davies patented the first blue jeans with copper rivets. 1873. He went to the gold fields in America to try and find gold. He didn't find gold, but he founded a wonderful company which exists today. Levi Strauss.
Made from old canvas temperature.
I think it was, wasn't it? Old canvas. It had to be something that wore extremely well, and the rivets were far better than sewing the material together. Yeah. D-hide. I'd never heard of D-hide before. Don't know what the D stands for. D-hide, on this day, patents the fountain pen. 1830. I would have thought it might have been before that even. Anyway, 2012, Robin Gibb, English rock and pop disco singer, songwriter, producer, the Bee Gees, Saturday Night Fever, dies from colon and liver cancer at just 62. You know, I remember meeting him, but it was in a strange circumstance. The Gibbs, they were immigrants to Australia from England, and I was doing door-to-door photography to keep body and soul together, and they were a client. It was a terrible little walk-up flat in Bronte Road, Bronte. I remember it well, because when I got in there I thought these kids looked rather familiar. They were only kids. And I remembered that I had seen the older one, Barry, on Bandstand. And then everything sort of fell into place. Anyway, I took all of these pictures of them, and Robin was only a little tiny kid. Little tiny kid. And from that tiny little flat, they would be some of the richest people in show business today. Talent will out, you see, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the only one left.
Yes, I know. Barry's the only one left. First speeding fine by a New York cab driver, 1899 on this day. It was an electric car, It was an electric car, and he was fined for doing 12 miles per hour down Lexington Street.
It was a Detroit electric.
Well, it just says the first. It was by a New York cabbie.
Yeah,
so
Detroit electric.
Yeah, and they were making electric cars.
And Baker Electrics at the same time.
Yeah. Well, they sort of were effectively put back in their box by virtue of the internal combustion engine, where I believe they will go again. History repeats itself, ladies and gentlemen.
For the second time,
Yeah.
for the same reason they failed the first time. But women bought them in droves.
Why?
Because they didn't need a crank start.
Right.
So in their crinoline or whatever they were wearing, they could jump in and have a tiller rather than a steering wheel.
Yes.
And it was push of a button.
Okay, well...
Very, very popular at the time.
Well, the crinolines gave way to the internal combustion engine, ladies and gentlemen. The funeral for Britain's King Edward VII, held in Westminster Abbey. And on this day, 1910 was the year, he had one of the largest assemblages, lovely word, assemblages of European royalty ever. Because they were all descendants of Queen Victoria. All those children and grandchildren. I don't know why we had the First World War. They were all, heads of those countries were all related to each other. Strange. 1910. The International Bureau of Weights and Measures, formed by the signing of the Meter Convention Treaty by 17 states, and prototypes of the metre and the kilogram selected. 1875. I've never been metricated. Have you guys?
No.
No. Pounds, shillings and pence and yards and feet and inches, that's all I understand.
Dropped off after CDs too.
Yeah. George Sampson patents the clothes dryer in 1892. James Stewart, I loved James Stewart, he was just a delightful man. Yeah. He was, I love the way actors in that era were just playing themselves. They were just playing themselves. Philadelphia Story, It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Vertigo, Born Indiana, Pennsylvania. The year was 1908. He died in 1997. The first railroad timetable published in a newspaper in 1830, it was the Baltimore American newspaper. Amelia Earhart leaves Newfoundland on her journey to become the first woman to fly solo and non-stop across the Atlantic. Thomas Edison says Americans prefer silent movies over talkies. Well, he knew a thing or two about movies, Thomas Edison. He said that in 1926. Ford wins the battle with Chrysler to call its new car the Falcon. I didn't know they were in a tussle over that. The first airplane catapulted from a dirigible. Charles Nicholson was the pilot. This was the day. 1930 was the year.
Lucky you got out of that.
Yeah. Yes. We got to go, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you hopefully on Friday around the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com. Meantime, we'll be back next Tuesday with a posting at 9 o'clock of the Court of Public Opinion from the garage. What are you looking at? Peter Clayton and I will be back. See you, Gary. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
This has been Jeremy Cordeaux. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.